To be here. Looking forward to talking with you all. So really quick, just to do some quick introductions. I am Scott Hall. I'm with Vericast. Vericast, we're a marketing technology company. With the interesting note that we are also the second largest player within the USPS. So we are rooted in geography, and that makes us unique in the sense that we're tying devices back to physical households, allowing us to drive consumers through their journey with your brands, with multi-channel campaigns. And I'll pass it over to you, Adriana, to talk about yourself.
All right, Adriana Kuropas from Dairy Management. You might wonder what that means or is, that we actually represent America's dairy farmers. So our bosses are the dairy farmers. We contribute to checkoff, and we help run campaigns for them and across research, marketing, and all that jazz. So excited to be here.
And I'm Andy Kuropas. Senior manager at the North Face. I oversee all paid media for North America.
Hi, I'm Brittni Ainsworth-Hukee. I'm the digital experience manager at Ferrara. You may be questioning what Ferrara is. You know our candy, so we have Nerd, Sweet Tart, Strolling, Laffy Taffy, plus a whole bunch more.
Awesome. Well, we're here today to talk to you about aligning your brands with Gen Z's needs. And this morning we talked a lot about authenticity, trust, honesty. And so I'm curious to understand from you guys and your brands, what are some of the things that you're doing today to drive visibility of authenticity with your brands? And Brittni, you can start with Ferrara.
Yeah, so there's a phrase that we say is not to be a try-hard in the content that we produce and kind of what we're putting out there. We have brand positioning statements that's rooted in consumer insights, brand truths, and is really looking at what our points of differentiation is. And so we use that to drive a lot of the content that we develop, but then we also look at where our target audience is. So where is Gen Z participating, what channels, and kind of mapping that back with what they are going to think is cool, but staying true to who the brand is that we've built.
And you want to take that one too?
Yeah, I would say very similar on our end. I think the North Face are in a super lucky position in the sense that a lot of our truths, a lot of our brand values, who we are at the core, is stuff that definitely resonates with Gen Z. So we're in a lucky position where, we don't have to go to a think tank and be like, hey, what's our thing with Gen Z? We're actually just empowered to really tell the stories that are truly meaningful to us. How we tell those stories is super interesting because Gen Z is a little bit different than a lot of other generations, and so matching that voice and resonating with them in that way is, an area of opportunity. It's really just kind of doubling down on the things that really, are at our brain's core and that we hold value.
Yeah. Any differences for the dairy farmers?
No, I think transparency probably comes into play even more so, especially with Gen Z. We really decided to focus in on our targets and get really savvy. And I was actually at a BI event at Art Basel in Miami, and one of the Adidas guys said it, and it really resonated, was we can't look in the mirror, we have to look through the window. We can't be looking at what resonates with us, the content that resonates with our farmers, for example. It really has to be in the voice, in the where Gen Z is, in the voice and tone it needs to be, and that I think we'll talk about influencers and stuff later. But I think that has been something that really sticks with me, is we've got to be authentic to the audience, not like we're authentic to ourselves in the work that we do, but we really have to think of how to make our product resonate and really sit with the audience and reach them in the way that they need to be reached.
Yeah. So I'm curious too, because I think one of the other things that comes into play with Gen Z is they're super focused in on principles and values. We talk about societal issues and things like that, or the things you're doing around sustainability, and we talked about environmental issues that tie into really focusing in on trying to drive that engagement with Gen Z. And Adriana, if you can just take that one too, start off with it.
So our farmers really do, they kind of look at themselves as the original environmentalists, but just because they are really working with the land all the time. Like they have to know how to leverage the land, how to maximize it and whatnot. So they're like, what do you mean the sustainability stuff? Like we've been doing this for hundreds of years. And we're like, okay, we totally get that, but how do we make it resonate and authentic to Gen Z? Because, and I think that was why the trust barometer makes sense, and kind of drilling down on my question to Courtney was, You know, I think being able to say, hey, we're really trying to make more progress, we're really doing things, is that enough, or how much is it in the proof? And that's what we're continuously evolving with, and looking at how Gen Z wants to receive the information and really focusing that message. And focusing on the target, not having some broad message that kind of appeals to all, but really looking at maybe that eco-conscious Gen Z or early parent. How do they want to receive the information? What sort of message will resonate with them versus just say like, hey, we're doing a really good job, trust us, wink, wink, you know? And I think that's been something that we've really used as our North Star, just being authentic. Our farmers are very authentic and they're very passionate about what they do and they want to nourish people and kids and all of that. And how do we convey that authenticity in the way that Gen Z and our target audiences want to hear? So that's really been kind of our focus.
Andy, how about you?
Yeah, I feel like I keep coming out to these questions because societal issues are just so engraved in, you know, our brand that I'm kind of just like, oh, it's something that we just do.
Yeah.
But, you know, to the point, it's telling the stories in the right way. I think it's engaging with Gen Z and having a conversation. I think that's one big difference that we see from, you know, older generations, where a lot of marketing, a lot of advertising was very talking at an audience versus allowing them to participate, bringing them into the storytelling. I argue with my dad all the time. He's like, no, you just need 15 seconds of just tell me what to buy, and that's it. I'm like, okay, you've never stepped foot in an office, but all right, I'll take the word for it. But no, it's about inviting people into a conversation. It's about talking about issues that they care about, that we also care about. And you know, and doing so in the right way on platforms where you find them, which raises a whole other challenge of like, okay, I have 6 seconds to tell this really complicated story on a platform that there are no rules. How do we do that? Which is fun to figure out, but albeit a little bit challenging. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just storytelling and making Gen Z part of that conversation.
Awesome. So I'm curious from a media mix perspective, and it's funny because I feel like, you know, 12 years ago to 15 years ago, we would have been in this room and we'd be talking about the same conversation around millennials, but now we're talking about Gen Z. But there are other generations out there still, all in different media spaces. When you think about media mix and trying to drive engagement with Gen Z, what are you finding that works? And how are you tying that into still being able to reach that, you know, Gen Z makes up like 25% of purchase power, reaching those other consumers that still make up 75% of the purchase power, you know, in the space, and we can start with that.
Yeah, so when we think about the Gen Z audience and kind of our media mix, and we may get to some of this a little bit later too, but we see creator culture is huge with this group. There's so many stats out there that say that Gen Z trusts and values social media influencers. So when we're launching a new product, we look at activating within influencers on TikTok. We partner with them to drive awareness of our brands and then end up boosting that content within that platform. But then other audiences, we still use the tried and true channels like Meta, Audio, FEP, OLD, those types of channels, so that we're not alienating our millennial or boomer audiences.
Yeah, I'd say for us, very similar. Gen Z, a lot of TikTok, a lot of creators, and then, you know, kind of different generations. Maybe a little bit older still with the meta and all of those things. And I think, you know, the most, at least for me, the most interesting aspect of that is, you know, how our voice changes a little bit. You know, the message may be the same underneath it all, but that's going to be conveyed on TikTok to Gen Z very differently than it's going to be with somebody like my dad, who just wants to know the what, why, when, and how much. And, you know, and Gen Z, honestly, it's truly amazing because I feel like they're just dying for brands to have personalities, to let down their hair a little bit and, you know, kind of be a little bit vulnerable, which for me is super exciting. I feel like I can have a strong personality, and so, you know, as a brand, like, I don't want to tie back or I don't want to hold back either. Yeah, I just kind of, I don't say it's all over the place. Yeah, it just kind of varies.
Nice. So, I mean, I think you hit on something that I want to talk about a little bit more, because you talked about, you know, they want the brands to have a personality, and think about those individuals within Gen Z, they also want to have personalized content coming to them from the brands. Are there things that you guys are doing to drive more personalization and reach and trying to have a relationship with those consumers in, Gen Z, which is the most diverse generation out there? You really have to change your messaging depending on who you're talking to. Are those things that you're focused on? And if so, what are you doing to tie that personalization to reaching those consumers?
I can take this one. So Trolley actually did a really fun placement this year with iHeart Dynamic Audio, and what we did is we built a shell of a script of an audio spot and then tailored certain elements of that message based on affinities we know within Gen Z culture. So, for example, one of the biggest cultures within Trolley's audience is gaming. So what we did is we tweaked parts of the script to talk to them during key moments. So gamers are gaming at night, on weekends, multiplayer. And so the audio is tailored to those specific moments so that when they hear it, it feels like a personal ad to them.
Yeah, we do a lot of similar things. That's a big area for growth, I think, for us. An area of opportunity, whether it's personalization on the site, within media, kind of within my space too. I know we're doing so much with Journey Builder and really looking to, it's easy to say right message, right product, right time, all of that stuff. Doing that actually in real time is extremely difficult and extremely complicated. I'm sure everyone probably knows that. But yeah, I think we're trying our best, and yeah, it's just challenging.
I don't know if I could just build onto that. Well, we took a step back and also realized, and this was mentioned, so it's good that we know that we're heading in the right direction, we're doing the right thing, is that it was beyond, often when we were growing up, it was like, milk does your body good, or it's the got milk ad, and it's how, let's take a step back and look at actually the fact that it's mind, body, purpose for Gen Z, and really delivering on all of that. So yes, there's actually nutritional benefits, but hey, does it take you back to your past? So also kind of personalizing through maybe whether it's a memory or maybe a benefit, or the fact that you are, kind of being in the occasions or the opportunities that each individual may need. Like something so versatile as a glass of milk or a thing of yogurt or making a smoothie or whatnot. You can do with it what you please or what works for you, but hey, you can get this feeling, you can get this benefit, you could do that. So I think also just being nimble with actually taking that step back and being able to be mind, body, purpose has kind of allowed actually a little bit more freedom in the framework, if you will, because you can kind of hit a couple more places, which can also be difficult in the same range.
Yeah. So thinking about it too, then, where you're hitting Gen Zs, I just feel like the media space in general today and how you're reaching consumers is so fragmented. Are there things that you're doing to try to drive efficiency in the way that you're spending dollars from a marketing perspective, in the way that you're driving product innovation? Just knowing that, right, those consumers are expecting personalization. Personalization comes cost. How does that tie into what you're doing today?
Yeah, it's tough. We have the big platforms, the big players, which are great. However, from our side of things, it's kind of like, all right, I need to diversify a little bit. I need to not be so reliant on these 3 channels to drive X amount of our performance. And it's hard to do that, especially when you have a finance team that expects things from you. So testing things, and sometimes you fail, and then it's kind of tough. But yeah, I would say it's a lot of just exploration, being okay with failing. I think our leadership, maybe not finance, don't tell them that I said this, but our marketing leadership is definitely on board with trying things and failing, because if you're not failing, you're not trying.
Yeah, I would say for us too, we're also looking at testing and learning and kind of also looking to see where our audience is over-indexing. So if we're seeing a shift, like Threads recently coming out, is that something, I know that there's no advertising opportunities there yet, but kind of looking to see where our audience is shifting and moving within their platforms and kind of doing the same thing.
And I think it is about defining the audience, really looking at, we have to be super efficient with our dollars. I think it was honing in on the specificity of the who and then where they are and where you can make the impact. And what we also learned was, it can take up to 23 times for them to see something for it to resonate. So you've got to be repeating that message and consistent. And we're something that is in the home and is kind of a forgotten thing, but also it's in people's carts, it's in whatever. So when you really think about that, it's like, okay, let's hone on the target. Let's not make it broad, because then you are kind of throwing money away theoretically, and know who we're reaching and then target them with the right stuff, and then just target them as much as we can on repeat.
So it's interesting that with that too, because we talked earlier today about the collapse of the funnel, right? And I'm curious, because you talked about 23 times before they'll engage with the product, and I think that historically that hasn't been the case. I'm curious if you're seeing that from a marketing funnel perspective. Is the relationship really now, it's not about the purchase, it's about building a relationship and having a relationship with that Gen Z consumer. Is that a focus for you guys? Are you seeing that with that consumer and the way that they engage with your products? And maybe Brittni, you can start with that one.
Yeah, thanks, I'd love to. So we actually have a program called Brand Ban Program, and what it does is it identifies consumers or even influencers who are just organically talking about our brands and trying to fuel that behavior. So one of the most notorious, and we love to talk about it around the company, is Kim K. So she recently wore a shirt that said, "I heart nerds." We jumped on that opportunity, made her a custom nerd shirt and sent it to her. So we just try to find those opportunities to speak their language, engage with those who they're already engaging with, and kind of fueling those passions and just kind of leveraging those brand fans to continue to drive those passion points.
Yeah, we do a lot of work in this space. The North Face is, generally speaking, I'd say it's kind of like a household name. So not a ton to do there with the awareness level of things. However, if you look at brain health trackers 5 years ago, we had an issue with people kind of caring about us. So that kind of made it very clear in the work that we needed to do. A couple years ago, we relaunched our membership program. A lot of our media is focused on re-engagement and driving lifetime value. So lifetime value, maybe a little bit more on the nerdy side of things. But yeah, I think we're super focused on driving brand love, and I think this all kind of goes back to the things that for us at our brand that are part of our core values and things that we truly care about, and feeling empowered to tell those stories, because Gen Z and everyone really should care about those as well.
Yeah. So we touched on it a little bit around influencer. I think social is really important to be in that space. But I have a theory around macro and micro influencers. I think macro influencers are really great at driving awareness. Micro influencers really great at actually driving them further down towards that purchase and having that relationship with the consumer. Are there strategies that you're using around influencer, around social, that align to that with macro and micro, really trying to have that, macro focus on we want broad awareness, but micro on we want to build a relationship through these influencers with our consumers?
Yeah, definitely. We work with a lot of what your grandma would call them macro influencers. And yeah, I think that's kind of like an early kind of point in driving down. And then we also work with a lot of micro influencers, which is super interesting because, they're not celebrities. They kind of are, but they're not. And I think people look at these micro influencers as almost like a friend. And obviously, everyone knows that word of mouth is super powerful. And so if you have access to all of these micro influencers that have this, I won't call it power, but this influence over people, for sure we leverage that. I think an interesting thing for us is, I would say, letting go of control a little bit. I'm sure that everyone here maybe has that issue. But it's also really interesting letting go of that control because you have somebody talking about the product or your brand in their own voice for a specific audience that's going to resonate with. So albeit tough, it's a good move, and I think we've seen a lot of success with it.
Nice.
Now we have what we deem the Dairy Dream Team. So we brought them back a few years in a row, and that has been really successful for us because, again, you're getting an authentic voice. They're also teeing it up the way that it makes sense and resonates. So it doesn't feel forced, it does feel authentic, and they're using, whether it be the butter boards or now there's butter bombs or, whatever it might be. We've just also seen a lot of dairy love come out of it, and then new usage occasions without us even trying. So it's like, we're not with our innovation team going like, what should we do next? Like, what should we start conjuring up? It's like, no, there's chefs, there's comedians, there's fitness people, whatever, and it can appeal to so many different ways and introduce it in a more realistic, easy, kind of turnkey fashion where it isn't industry telling you to do something, and it's really just cool stuff. So I think it's been a really successful voice, because I think we don't really have the celebrities or any of that stuff. We've just learned that I think being authentic and using kind of real people, real voices, real product is a good thing.
Yeah. Anything to add on that, or?
Yeah, I would just say we kind of take the same strategy. We use a lot of micro-influencers to help us create content. I mean, like you said, a lot of letting go of that control and kind of allowing them to tell it in their own voice again. I think I saw a stat recently that was 53% of Gen Z puts more trust and loyalty into social influencers, so we use that to our advantage and then boost a lot of that content through paid media to reach a broader audience.
Yeah. So as you look at the future of marketing, and I think Gen Z has shown that they're the first digital native generation, are there things that are newer that you're really excited about that are more in that test phase than in that tried and true phase that you're really leaning into today?
That's a great question. Yes, so actually recently, a couple of our Gen Z brands that we've kind of designated as that's our core audience that we're targeting, when Threads came out, we kind of let our community manager just take the handcuffs off and test different types of content within that platform to see how it's resonating with that audience and kind of what the conversation looks like. So just a lot of testing and learning.
Threads has been interesting. Yeah, we were up late that night playing things. It was fun. Which also, I guess, Threads kind of, leans into something that I'm super excited about and kind of mentioned before. It's just this less formal interaction between brands and consumers. Anytime, and especially with emerging platforms like Threads or TikTok or something like that. Anytime I see a brand ad that pops up on TikTok, actually I had to delete TikTok. So I asked your resident Gen Z Lexi to do all the TikToking for me. But it's so easy to pick up, look at TikTok and it's oh, that's a brand ad immediately. And I think that's really exciting to try and find a way to I don't want to say skirt that, but find out who your brand is on these platforms like TikTok when it isn't, oh, here's a jacket in a very produced studio, very formal, here are the pit zips on the coat and that thing. So I think that's what I'm most excited for is what does storytelling look like once it stops being this very produced and kind of formal storytelling and marketing.
Nice. I think we're close on time, so we're going to open it up to questions out in the audience if anybody's got questions for the group.
Yeah. Hi, thank you all for speaking and being here. I'm curious to hear about your brand's plans for AR and VR in the future and how you're going to incorporate that into the brand experience.
I just had to laugh because our crew is here and I'm like, do we have a plan on that? I was like, no, we're just going to say when we put a plan on it, so that's definitely not.
Yeah, we've already dabbled in AR, and VR as well. Do we have a fully built out strategy for that? No. Do we shoot from the hip on some activations just to see what's going on and try that? Yeah, sure. Things like Snapchat, there's a lot of kind of AR try-on functionalities that we've done in the past, especially with footwear, which I think is super interesting and super exciting. We've also done some stuff with Roblox as well, which I think is a really interesting space. VR, not so much. When I start seeing VR headsets on the subway, maybe I'll kind of be all right, maybe we need a strategy, but for now we haven't done too much.
Yeah, same. We don't have that strong of a strategy around those channels. It's more or less just testing and learning when the opportunity arises. I think for Trolley specifically, because gaming is such a huge focus for that brand, when there is the right opportunity to do so, we do try and test kind of driving awareness around that LTO packaging during that time.
Any other questions?
Guys, I think we crushed it.
We're right before lunch, so we gotta wrap it up, guys.
Well, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much. It was an honor to be up here with you all. Thank you.